So with regard to water, what do you think that Butte County is doing right, and what do you think that we could be doing better?
Okay, so under SGMA, where we're studying our groundwater, Butte County is ahead of most counties in the state. We have a great scientist, Christina Buck, that is really looking at the Tuscan, the upper and lower Tuscan and alluvial, and finding that it's just not this big monolithic lake that the rest of the state looked at, because frankly, they would like us to sell all our surface water rights south, and they'd like us to depend on our groundwater, or they'd like us to do some sort of conjunctive use. I've heard this out of DWR scientists' mouth, that we'd like to have you, in time of drought, pump your groundwater because you stored it, and send more of your surface water south. So finding out exactly what's where and how much of it's there and how often we can exercise or use it is very important. So that part of our water policy, we're really strong. We're in a 6-county MOU because that's what the state requires to apply for grants. And we're doing that, and we've just received over $1 million and are ahead of the curve. As far as policy with the dam or DWR, our relationship there, it's been 50 years of abuse by DWR. I mean, the veil of apathy comes down over the public. They forget so quickly. You need to go back and read all the documents, understand that when the water bonds were, I'm going to do this briefly as I can, when the water bonds were passed, it barely passed in the state. It was like 53%. This is Pat Brown. This is in the beginning. Butte County was, and Yuba County, I've heard both ways, but I think only the two of us north of Sacramento voted for it. And this great transfer of water came about, but none of the infrastructure promised for local people. We got maybe 25% of any of the recreation they promised. And that in a historical perspective is terrible. But they've even gone back in the 1990s and said that the bulletins that they put out, and I'm terrible about getting these numbers inverted, but I think it's 117-6 is a bulletin that showed all the future recreation around the lake. They got that thrown out. They convinced FERC, but there was no public outcry or input because we didn't know. And right now, it costs us as taxpayers in Butte County to host the lake, and that shouldn't be. Our police, fire, probation, jail, our wear on our roads, and remembering we receive no economic benefit because people pay a gate fee to state parks. People recreate in the state park, pay taxes at the marina on a state park. We get some recreational benefit, which is still way less than they promised us. It costs us over $7 million a year. There's 41,000 acres off the tax rolls, and that would be another over $7 million a year, a CPI of 1.74% annual for the last 50 years. And we're not talking about, we're saying nothing new got built. None of the little towns became little tourist traps. Nobody was using all those beautiful rapids with their kayaks and things. Nobody was up there fishing for the salmon that presidents would come to. We're saying it stayed just as stale as it was. Right now, we're subsidizing them. So I'd like to put it to the water contractors. All I want is a penny a day a customer. $3.65 a year times those 25 million people. Give us that 90-some million dollars and we'll be whole. They won't give us 12 million, but it's just in a perspective that the arrogance of the culture of DWR is such that we should be grateful that they have the lake in our backyard. They generate, we don't know how much, because first off, they can't keep the turbines running. They got one broke now. They had terrible trouble keeping the turbines running. They burned down the powerhouse. We had to go rescue the people there. Just throw that in for you. They probably generate $100 million a year conservatively in electricity. And they wheel that, at peak times, and they sell it wherever to pump water over to Hatchapees and to move it here. And the only benefit Butte County gets is we look at the power lines. That, to me, is terrible. If we were a federal facility, they'd give you a payment in lieu of taxes for the land inundated. If you're a federal facility, they'd give you a share of the power. They would build the recreation up like Lake Shasta. We just get treated so badly, but it's their culture. You can meet at the top person, and they're empathetic and they want to help, but their culture and the water contractor's culture is, well, we don't want to be precedent setting. We don't want to be fair. We don't want to give them a penny a day a person. I'll take a penny a tree, you know, to make us, because that veil of apathy comes down over our public, and they forget we subsidize that lake. We have less police, we have less fire, we have less libraries because the lake's in our backyard, and there's something morally wrong about that. And we're getting ready to meet with DWR again, try to get them to listen to us a little bit about this, try to get them to push this down to the water contractors that you ought to pay a little bit more money.
This speaks to the paradox of plenty, the resource curse we talk about on the show a lot. I mean, there's a place, Sinclair, Wyoming, that has one of the largest oil refineries, and they pay the highest price in gas. I mean, the water bills in Oroville are, one side of the street, it's one thing. The other side of the street, it's astronomical. And yet there's a dam right there with water. And, I've looked at some of the numbers too. It looks like the county has, paid for this dam basically of the operation of it. And you're right. When we voted, we were promised things, a monorail, of campsites and all this recreation and tourism money.
Hundreds more campsites, 1,500 parking places in town. It was a devastation of Oroville when the dam was complete. People, fled the area because the construction boom was over. All the people that gave support to the construction workers left. They didn't build a parking lot. They didn't build a tram or train. They were going to run to the base of the dam. They didn't start the hourly tours they promised. And the downtown of Oroville, it vacated. I mean, I lived here. I was growing. It just collapsed. Welfare rolls in the entire county tripled in 2 years, all directly attributable to the dam being complete. And then it compounded with loss of logging jobs and other construction jobs are complete. But that really was the catalyst for the downturn of the whole county in a way. And yet it was predicted in 2 studies. That's why when you go back and read the historic documents, somebody said, you open old scabs. No, go read, because if you don't study history, you're bound to repeat it. It said in these 2 studies, when they studied the dulles up in Washington or Oregon, and they studied Shasta, right here, they saw this economic downturn. Unless there was robust recreation, they predicted this would happen. And yet they did nothing to prevent it. And so, yeah, I'm a champion of that. I'm proud that I fight for it. And I'm proud to make people aware of it, because if they would speak as a united voice and we could stay together, they should somewhere hear us, at least be fair. We don't just pay us our out-of-pocket expenses. We'll eat the payment in lieu of taxes or something, but they won't do it.